What's up, everybody? Welcome to Studio Wesley Live, our weekly hangout for community connection. I'm Derek, and got a great panel tonight. Going to be so good. Hope everybody out there is doing good. So let's just go ahead and get the panel here, get them talking. Let's start with Neil. Neil, how you doing? Opening, I'm just curious, if you had to choose your transportation mode in honor of Palm Sunday-ish, would you choose a donkey or a horse? Those are your two options: donkey or horse.
So here's the thing. I've never like donkey is my size, like is my height, but also like I think about jockeys and stuff, and I'm not quite jockey height either. Like I'm that awkward brand of like too short for a lot of things, but too tall for some things. I think I'd want to ride a horse just because like I love like westerns and stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'll have to have a horse.
Horse. My favorite part about this, Neil, is that you got seconds awareness about this question, and you had a body of opinionated knowledge ready to go on this question, even though I hadn't really given you a heads up. I appreciate you. And hey, it's good to see you, my friend. Grace, how you doing? What's your choice? Donkey or horse? Which one?
Derek, I don't know, man. I also kind of have opinions about this. My family shows horses. I don't know if my mom used to do it as well, but my aunt used to do it, paused for a bit, and currently shows horses. So like for that, I probably have to pick horse. It's fun. I had fun riding a horse. I get to play around when I go up there and visit. But also with Neil, like size wise, it might behoove me to ride a donkey instead. But I don't know.
Behoove? Behoove
Behoove,
is in hoof? Behoove? Behoove? Okay,
baby girl. No, yeah. So it might behoove. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Yes.
It might behoof me to ride a donkey instead, but horse wise. Plus, then also like thank you, Allison. We're getting a full like array of stuff. Oh my gosh. No, so okay, I have not, but when we used to go on trips with my youth group, we went to like the place that kept us had a bunch of like farm animals. So I've befriended a
Mm,
donkey
mm.
and a mule, both of them.
Nice.
Derek, you didn't include mule. What the heck,
I
man?
didn't. I didn't. I did not include mule, and I'm probably not being as inclusive with my animal beings as I should, and so I'm on my journey. I'm working on that. But I was specifically thinking about sort of the Jesus riding in on a donkey as opposed to like a war horse kind of thing, but Jesus could ride in on a horse and like be a peaceful horse. Like there's like horses in Revelation, but then that's a little more like Jesus riding in and dominating. So I'm mixing my metaphors here. I appreciate Neil is going to
I
offer.
I was just gonna say, I was fully expecting you to bring up the controversy, the never-ending debate of what did Jesus actually ride in on? It's like,
That's a debate.
yeah, isn't the verse is something? It's like, what is it? Hold on, I've got it pulled up here. Right, it's like because I think between different. Oh yeah, it says in Matthew's gospel we read that Christ rode a female donkey and her baby colt. However, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we wrote that Christ rode a donkey without any mention of the colt. So like people have discussions about this. You know what I mean? Like, was Jesus riding two things at the same time? Like, was he riding on one, had the palms on the other? Like, who's right, who's wrong?
Interesting. I knew that, but it never rose to the level of controversy for me. I just thought like one of the guys saw an extra star cult and was like, let's go. Like just
Or he's
gave him their
lying.
cameo. it
It
just so we
it's like the actuality. It's like one guy saw one thing, the other guy saw the other, and then two of the others just copied the guy who was wrong. It's
of course. Of course. Of course. So with that, I'll give my answer and then we'll move us on. I appreciate y'all Like y'all like went all in on my opening question. You could have been like, Derek, what are we doing? Like that's the question you come up with seconds before we start. It actually is, it's the question that came up with in my brain as I woke up from my nap. For me, I gotta be honest, I'm afraid I might have some like uh body dysmorphia, but my understanding, and I know this isn't really correct, my understanding of a donkey is they just look fragile to me. And so I'm afraid that like I might break it. Like I recognize that Jesus was on a donkey. I'm afraid I might break. So I go for the horse because like horse is like thoroughbred. And like the donkey's like little Eeyore. And I'm like, I might break Eeyore. I would break Eeyore. Yeah. That's that. So I have to go with the horse because I think I've got weightage that the donkey didn't ask for. Yeah.
Beloved, what if every donkey was not Eeyore? What if other donkeys had physical and emotional strength?
The older I get, the more I relate to Eeyore.
And with that, we're going to go directly to highlights of the week. Let's go. High of the week is our weekly segment where each member of the panel is going to share something they saw out there in the world, neighborhood, the nations that they want the Studio Wesley universe to know about. And so, Grace, we're going to start with you. What's your highlight for this week?
So my highlight of the week, I wanted to change it right before we started, and I was like, no, it's okay, it's fine, because 5 Seconds with Summer also started their tour this week. Anyway, that's not my highlight. My highlight is that one of my classes at school right now is called Teaching for Wisdom. It's part like religious education and also part biblical interpretation. But we have a student teaching moment where like each of us has to sign up at some point throughout the semester to teach on some sort of pedagogy. So either a certain pedagogy like from Job or Ecclesiastes or a concept like playfulness or attention. I signed up for playfulness. I say all this to say, Thursday night, I taught my class how to line dance. So we started line dancing, and it was so fun, and we played, and we had a great time. And so the link is, it's not necessarily a tutorial on how to do it, because I couldn't find a tutorial with the exact one that, like, I know. But it is from the place that I go. Because at 9 p.m. when class ends, I go out line dancing. So then, like, I just linked the place where I learned it, or the like group that teaches it where I learned it. But it was fun. It was fun, and like my classmates had a good time, and we played, and I had like reflection questions too. Like, it was fun. It was just, we had a good time. Wow. So that was my highlight. But also, it's Grace's ASMR moment because I'm gonna crack my soda can open. So I love y'all.
Oh, Grace, thank you for that personal highlight. Let me just say, I would need a class, like I would need a formalized like space to line dance. So I really appreciate that, because that's the only way you get me into spaces like that. Like not even going to a line dancing club. Like I'll just sit with my Molbeck, and not that they would have Molbeck at that club because they just won't. So I'll sit with my Negroni. Not that they would have Negroni at that club. I'll sit with whatever drink that I was able to get that meets my expectations of a drink. And I would just be watching people. But in a class, I would be very likely like, all right, fine. I'll join you. So that, I imagine that picked up people who probably would in any other context be like, I'm good here. I like to watch the people. But yeah. So thank you for that highlight. Oh. And the ASMR moment. Thank you for that too. We appreciate it. Neil, what's your highlight for this week?
Hello. So I was initially struggling to find a highlight because everything I wanted to link was behind like a subscription fee for an article. And I was like, listen, that's cool and all, but I don't want that. So instead, I decided to, also the things I wanted to talk about were like kind of sad because there's just like more local restaurant closures and stuff. So those are lowlights, but I actually have a highlight. And a few months ago, I mentioned how Manifest, the distillery I work at, partnered with Congaree and Penn, which is a another local farm slash cidery that is a little bit outside of Jacksonville. And it was a cool farm to table thing where the cooks came, the Manifest set up a little tasting area, and we had little tiny bites and tiny cocktails that we paired alongside of them. Well, we're going to do another one next month, April 9th. This one's going to be titled Pour and Explore. The other one was Farm to Distillery. So for Pour and Explore, now we, as bartenders, we're going to the farm this time. And the idea is that it's again going to be a dinner and a tasting, but it is also going to come along with a tour of the actual farm. So that's going to be really fun for people to do. It's not the cheapest thing in the world. It's like $105 per person. But so I'm lucky I'm going for work. But it's still like just a super fun thing to, be a part of, right? I mean, I love when local businesses collaborate with each other, especially in a season of the world where, a lot of like local businesses are struggling due to just, external circumstances and things going on. So the fact that we get to do this and help some people make some memories is going to be super fun. I know the food is going to be delicious, and surely we are going to make delicious drinks, which we have not a single one planned out yet, but we're going to get there because nothing like a little bit of a crunch to force some creativity. But yeah, it's going to be a fun time. Really excited.
So a couple things about your highlight, Neil. One, I always appreciate the local emphasis. Like that's just right in the pocket. Also, Hungary and Penn is a really great farm. Like I've performed a couple of weddings out there. I've had dinner out there. I've actually just had dinner out there. Like drove out there to have dinner one time, but have performed multiple weddings in that space. It's a great wedding venue, and but also like just love what they're doing. Like love what they're doing out there. It's their business model. I've had some friends also work out there too. So thanks for that highlight, Neil. Thank you. All right. My highlight, it's coming at us from a very different place in my brain. I like to lift up movies that are coming out or have come out, and I'm going to do that. But I need you to know, friends, I have not seen this movie. The movie that I'm highlighting is a movie I've not seen, but I want to help us. I want to help us notice the signs, okay, of something that might actually be really, really special in the culture. So the movie that I am highlighting, let me go back and get oh my gosh, where is it? Where is it? Oh, yes, Hail Mary. Hail Mary is the movie that it's in its second weekend, finishing up its second weekend, and doing incredibly well. Like doing incredibly well.
Hail Mary.
Project Hail Mary, thank you. Project Hail Mary. See, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the movie. I'm highlighting it to say this might be one to go see, friends. If you were like me, or you're like, I might sleep on this one. I don't know. I might sleep on this one. I want to say we might not want to sleep on this one, okay? Thank you, Michael. Project Hail Mary. So here's some things. That one of the reasons why I think it's just a brilliant movie that we want to pay attention to. It's a sci-fi movie, and at this moment in like the saculum of human history, sci-fi is doing something very specific. Particularly as all of our institutions are crumbling, sci-fi is coming not to say, hey, our institutions will continue to crumble, which possibly. Sci-fi in this particular moment in human history is often saying there's hope, there's a better way, there's something coming. I get the impression that this movie might be it. This movie might be doing that. So sci-fi is a big deal. I hear there are aliens or an alien, and so I have a thing about that. I'm like that could be interesting. But finally, and I got to give a shout out to my guy, Ryan Gosling. And I feel like one day we're going to find out that Ryan is secretly a United Methodist. I don't know if he is. He might not even be like in the Abrahamic faith traditions, but I don't know. He gives me like middle of the congregation, like United Methodist vibe. Like that's what he gives me. Y'all can disagree with me. That's okay. But I'm out here for Ryan because he reminds me of United Methodist. Also, I think he does a really great job at his craft. So here's the deal. That's a question that we should all answer. We should all look into figuring out if Ryan Gosling is a United Methodist, because there are different flavors within the Wesleyan ecosystem. We're happy for it, here for it, but United Methodist is a particular part of that. Thank you, Michael, with the asterisks. You're doing it today. And Annalise has a point that we're going to come back to. We're going to come back to that point in a minute, Annalise. I appreciate you. Okay, so yes, my highlight is Project Hail Mary. I hear, and I don't think I'm ruining anything. I don't know how to ruin something that I've not actually seen, but there might be like the Hail Mary full of grace motif somewhere in there too. That's what I've been told, that there's the full of graces there. And I'm like, So I haven't seen it, but I just want to say, I'm going to see this one soon. And I want to tell everybody, you should go see it soon. You should go see Project Hail Mary soon. I'm not necessarily saying that our friendship's on the line. I'm saying that my belief that you would see a good thing coming might be on the line. That might be on the line. So Project Hail Mary, that's my highlight. All these highlights are going to be available to us on Instagram. Thank you, Allison. You're awesome. And okay, Annalise said in the comments. Annalise said, so when Matthew, he rode on a donkey in a cult, its translation of a form of poetry doesn't translate into modern context. So it's very likely he just rode in on one animal. I think this is important because, guys, when we don't take into account the kind of literature the scriptures are, we sometimes read things that the author didn't intend. It's okay. It just is a thing.
So I'm right that he lied.
I'm not saying he lied. I'm saying, and I think Annalise is saying, it's a particular literary device that we aren't as aware of.
So you're saying monks were dumb.
It's a different type of lie.
And with that, we're going to go. Thank you, Annalise. You're great. We're going to go to announcements now. I love how the donkey horse thing like really lit us up. I got everybody all up in it. Like those are the kind of icebreaker questions that like, let's go. Okay, announcements. There will be community group tonight. Me and Allison are going to be hanging out with folks over in Zoom. So please come hang out with us. We'd love to have you. It's going to be really cool. And then we will not be having community group or live next week because of the Easter weekend. I know for me, Sundays are already a thing. And next Sunday is going to be a big thing. So I'm going to need a little nap if I'm going to, get through the rest of the week. So next week, we will not be having live or community groups. So, but we will have it tonight. So I hope folks will hang out with us. And with that, this is a really good episode. I'm loving this. We're going to go to our recurring episode, Studio Wesley Cafe. Okay. Studio Wesley Cafe is one of our recurring segments where a member of the panel will bring a piece. Sometimes it's a song. Sometimes it's a piece of literature. Tonight, it's a podcast episode, but we bring a piece to the table that we want the Studio Wesley universe to really consider and to think about. And so tonight, I gave our panel a link to a podcast by Ezra Klein, the Ezra Klein Show. And the name of that episode was What Trump Didn't Know About Iran. I think that's the name of it. I'm not doing really good on this. So What Trump Didn't Know About Iran. That's the name of the episode. I didn't expect the panel to listen to it because it's an hour and a half. So, and I only sent it to them like an hour and a half before we started. So, but I do submit it, and it's a question that I bring to the table. And this is why I named this piece. Well, I didn't name the piece, but I named our discussion What Trump and Most of Us Didn't Know About Iran. One thing as I was listening to this podcast episode, and it's in the comments if you'd like to listen to it. I just was yet reminded again of how everything has this story, this much larger story. And because we're living in this moment, we're kind of only aware often of the stuff right here, like in our purview. And so that's the place where we make bring a lot of our opinions. It's a place where we're really speaking to, and I don't want to discount that. Like there is something about being present for the moment and the thing that's happening in the moment. And like all caps, underline, bold, and I think we as citizens, we as humans, we as people who live in the 21st century who have access to this information, to ourselves and our friends, our communities, and ultimately, yeah, the world, a disservice by not allowing ourselves to go and look for the larger story, the larger narratives. And Iran is one of those things for me. This is where I'd love for people to say to me, Derek, you haven't asked. You don't know. You don't know. I'd love for people to say, oh no, dude, I know Iran's story. I've been out here. I'm listening. When we decided that we were going to have military operations in Iran, like I pinged all of those things, all of the history, all at once. But I don't think we did. And I'm not saying that we all need to be like history nerds like me. I'm a history nerd for sure. But I do think maybe it's important for us to take time to have a larger sense of the world and how we got to where we are. So some high points from the podcast that I think is important for us to think about with this conflict with Iran. And I just want to name out loud, like, gosh, I don't know if I'll ever be in full agreement of a war. I don't know. That's Derek. That's just Derek. That's where I am. I've also not been in the room where I had to make the decision. I've not been in the room where the high classified information has been given to me. All I've got are these points of history, and I just don't see war being a good thing. So that's Derek. And also, I'm going to be very, very like intellectual and brainy about this. I'm going, not that I don't have emotions, just the emotions related to the Iran conflict is not really where I'm trying to go tonight. So, all right, a couple highlights from the podcast, and then I'm going to open the floor to my panel to just respond to what I'm saying and tell me, Derek, I think you're being too hard on us. And I'm like, okay, I'll take that. All right, so highlight one, the podcast reveals just how ignorant we are about our shared history. Like we will often, when I hear people talk about Iran, they go directly to 1979, 1980, the revolution, and then the kidnapping of American citizens in Iran. And yes, like big deal, like, yeah, Jimmy Carter and then Ronald Reagan. But there's actually like stuff that happened in the 50s that we interacted with, and not in this podcast, but in another podcast called oh gosh, what's the name of the podcast? 2 seconds. I'll tell you the name of the podcast because it's also a really good podcast, particularly about history. But the podcast Behind the Bastards, which is a really good, like, unpacking, like they'll take 4 episodes to unpack one kind of subject, but in a way that's quite accessible. We got stuff going back to the mid 1800s. I mean, honestly, we've got stuff going way back. My point is that many people in their arguments that Trump and the administration, but I don't think it's just Trump. I think it's us too. We don't think in terms of decades. We think in terms of days. And our thought is that because something happened last week, that's all we're responding to. But I think when we actually zoom out and don't have a U.S.-centric purview of the world, we'll realize that we're still living in response to things that happened centuries ago, depending on the conversation, depending on the conflict. And so when it comes to Iran, there's good evidence that we're still pinging to stuff that happened in the 1800s. I think it's important because our opinions get informed by this history. So one of the things, again, that gets borne out in this podcast is just the lack of understanding of the shared history between Iran and the United States and the West more broadly. I think also what gets borne out in this episode and requires even more exploration is the idea that Iran, like there's this one type of person in Iran, they're all Persians, they're all inheritors of the Persian Empire, and you'll just find out in the episode that that's not true. That like in most cases, Iran is a country that has a diversity of citizens. They're all coming. They've got different stories, different histories themselves. They interact with their government from different places. And this is true of every country, but I think we miss it. I think we miss it when we just imagine there's one type of person in Iran. No, there's not just one type of person in Iran. I mean, even the correlation of Iran and Persia is erasing entire groups of people in that country. So that's the second piece. The third piece is, and it's all over everything that I've said, just the multiple takes on the history. And this is really key for all of us in the United States. Like, we often learn history starting in elementary school, which I support, as if everybody's agreed that this is what happened then. And this is why it happened. But actually, there are multiple narratives at play right now. Like right now, this conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran, and what is happening amongst the other Gulf states. Guys, even calling the region the Middle East is making a choice about whose history we're going to sort of live in, whose perspective, whose interpretation of history we're going to live into. And so, yeah, I bring this to Studio Wesley Cafe. This is not necessarily the kind of conversation everybody wants to have via coffee, but it's a conversation I felt like we need to have. I want to invite us, I do want to invite us to consider that maybe we need to do a little more work of knowing the story, particularly right now, of Iran. But that could also be true of the Congo. That could be true of Ukraine. That could be true of China and its issues around Taiwan. Like there are stories here that, no, we're not going to necessarily be in the room today making the decisions about what the United States military apparatus will do. But our opinions shape our politics. Our politics shape the way that we vote. The way that we vote often shapes the type of people we then coalesce with and work with. It all goes back to the body of knowledge we're working with. And if we're not working with a strong body of knowledge, we might lead ourselves and our friends in directions that are not as helpful for the flourishing of all people. I have said a lot of words now. I'm going to now turn it to Grace and Neil to respond to the podcast and my thoughts on it. So, friends.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I think what gets me about like this concept of like, hey, what if your country that you live in isn't the only country in the world, and what if like there's other like situations happening in other places that impact existence, like it. And it feels cliche for me to say this because I've heard this so much, but it like that seems like it should be like a given. Like it seems like that should be common sense. And then like I find myself learning something or hearing about something for that like another country does, or that like, and not even like super serious life-changing things like when you're in a war, but just like a random cultural thing, and I'm like, "Oh, I am more America centric than I thought, because I just learned this thing that connects but actually doesn't connect to this thing that I do that I thought." And it makes me think a lot too about like so one of the books, okay, sorry, I was pulling the title of it because my bookshelf is right here. Last semester I took a class called Voices of Nonviolence, and so we looked specifically at forms of nonviolent protest and examples throughout history. And one of the books that we read, Occupied with Nonviolence, was written by someone who lives in Palestine. And even in that even in that case recently, as Americans who, or for the Americans who are not as invested in histories of other nations and cultures, it seemed like it was this one situation that started on like one specific day with one specific event. And the truth is, this has been a thing for a long time. And I appreciate what you said, thinking in terms of decades rather than days, because there's a lot of context that contributes to any given action at this point. And not just like the action itself, but the impact that it has.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much I can like contribute and add, because I think that you said the things that I would also say. But it's just like we know so little and we assume that we know so much. And then when you take a minute and sit back and like just learn, the world opens up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Grace. I appreciate that. Neil, what you thinking?
So much, man, so much. On the note of some of the historical misconceptions, because you know you were mentioning how like when people think about Iran, right? It's like people think like, oh, look at these pictures of Iran before the revolution, and it's like, okay, like that was like yeah, like thinking in like decades. It's like that was also like a very different time. You know, like people do the same thing about Cuba all the time. People are like,
Mhm.
look at Cuba pre-Castro, and then you look at historical accounts, and you're like, yeah, but like Batista was also quite bad, if not worse. They just had nicer, newer cars back then, and you had a bunch of Americans who could visit Cuba and you know freely have like all the rum and cigars and stuff that they wanted. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like yeah, a lot of that changed like after the revolution, and then you know and then you get into like things like the Cuban Missile Crisis and all this other stuff and the continued embargo, and you know now you know the thing that Derek, you know, we mentioned like today, right, you know, where it's like the Cuba basically can't get oil, so there's like an energy crisis and all these things, but all of that goes back to decades and decades and decades before that have now
Yeah.
built up to right where we are now. And that's just like the way all of this is. I mean, even thinking about like uh like to understand where we are today, right? Like this year America is going to celebrate 250 years since the Declaration of Independence. So now we're thinking in centuries, you know, in terms of this, in terms of like the growth of this country and how we've gotten to where we are now. And particularly in terms of well, how do we get to, you know, the sort of world politics we're on now? It's like, well, for that, you know, you sort of need to go like to the early like 20th century and see where the foundations of where we are now were laid. And yeah, and like cultures are, you know, like cultures change, they shift, you know, it's like things are so different than they were even like 10 years ago. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking with, you know, sort of millennials, older millennials, and sometimes Gen X, you know, a lot as well, who come into my bar. And, you know, we talk about like, not necessarily like, you know, politics so much, but just like drinking culture, you know, it's like what
Mhm.
like so it's really just like urban sociology stuff, you know. It's like, well, you know, like why don't kids drink as much? I was like, well, you know, here let me there why are bars designed the way they are? It's like, well, let me tell you about the way things were in the 2000s and then the 2010s and then how we got to where we are now. And you know, and then you have this little thing called the pandemic that happened right at the beginning of this decade. And we are now, you know, in the later half of this decade, still feeling the effects of something that started 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's like when you really dive in and look at like nothing happens overnight. You know what I mean? It's like revolutions don't happen overnight. Wars don't necessarily. Well, I mean, it sometimes feels like they happen overnight, but like
Right. Right.
you
Yeah.
wake up one morning, it's like, oh, we're at war with Iran. All right, cool. But then,
Mhm.
but then also when you look at it, you're like, well, there's this tension that's been like, you know, like we've been poking at this for like literally decades. Um, so while it was a surprise, sometimes if you look back and you're like, well, it's maybe less of a surprise, but still quite a surprise. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's the old quote that's attributed to Winston Churchill, right? It's like if you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And people just need to learn from their history and learn to do better and be better.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Neil. And I think, you know, even listening to you too, one part that may be hard to sort of take in when it comes to just history, again, it's that we don't study history to get this one right answer. And we've not been set up for that. I mean, we the test that we took was, do you know history? And if you don't, then you failed. Like there's like baseline of like we all agree that these events happened, but y'all, we're like living in a moment now where like we don't even agree on the things that happened. Like that the thing that happened. And so like it is going to call us to take some courage. It's going to call us to be a bit more resilient in conversations, to figure out how to have conversations without shutting them down because people disagree with us, which is really hard. But I feel like as US citizens, we have so much influence in the world. I don't like that we have all that influence. That is what that is. And so, in the fact that we have that much influence, even our votes should be more informed. I think that that's just what it means to be a US citizen, that our votes should be, yes, we have the responsibility to be more informed because our country has an oversized influence in the world. And so I do think that it's on us. I do. And so I do say this to college students and young adults. It's on us, y'all, because I'm not really a young adult anymore, even though I kind of look like it. But it's on y'all. It's on y'all to inform your opinions beyond. I love Instagram, but we've got to get beyond the Instagram reel of being the backbone of our knowledge base. We're going to probably have to crack open some books, some long form podcasts, and listen to multiple podcasts who are like, that's not necessarily agreeing, so that we get a full sort of spectrum as much as we can. But Grace, Neil, thank you for entertaining this old guy's contribution to Studio Wesley Cafe. I am that old guy that walks into the cafe and is like, kids, you really need to know how we got here. You really need to know. And we're going to talk about it right now. And everybody else is like, dude, we were just listening to music. Everything was chill. Like, I know, but we need to know. We need to know. Okay. If you have any thoughts about what we talked about in Studio Wesley Cafe, drop them in the comments. Ashra, appreciate you sharing what you're picking up. But with that, we're going to take a quick break and come back for our final segment. So it's been a really great show. Appreciate Grace and Neil and everybody who's hanging out in the comments for just everything that has been offered tonight. As we're closing, just aware that it's Palm Sunday for many Christians in the world. And even then, it's not Palm Sunday for all Christians in the world. Not all Christians are using the same calendar that we're using. And that's just an important thing to remember. But this, for those of us who are celebrating Palm Sunday, it's the day that Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, though one of the guys is like, and there's a cult there. But Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, and the people are shouting, Hosanna, save us. They're asking him to come and do something definitely personal, but probably political, societal, like something bigger. And it's a moment in Jesus' story. It's a moment in the story of the people of Israel that it's going to lead to the cross and many key moments in the Christian story. And I think one of the things we have to grapple with this week, which is Holy Week, is the ways that God is going to hear the prayers of people, but in a way that the people did not ask for. Oh God, save us. I don't think they're thinking, all right, cool, go to the cross. That checks out. That's the answer to the question. Not at all. One of the things that I wrestle with on Palm Sunday is the ways that I know how God's going to save me. I know how God's going to rescue me. I know how God is going to fix the situations I find myself in. And often God does it in a very different way. And sometimes God doesn't even like use my calculus at all. Like God answers the question in a way that I'd rather God not. And those are moments that we are invited to deepen our trust. And so all I want to invite this week, as we're in Holy Week, I do want to invite you, Studio Wesley, to consider the things that you're sort of reaching out to God, saying, hey, God, I need you to intervene. Hey, God, I need you to save me on this. Hey, God, I really need your help. And I want us to acknowledge, be willing to acknowledge that it doesn't look like God's going to do it the way that I think God should. And that's disappointing. And we can still trust. We can trust with disappointment. We can bring our disappointments with us in the trusting. And I do want to invite you to consider trusting God a little bit more. And that's a spiritual thing. That's not a here are 3 ways to practically trust God. No, it's an inward, like unsaid often risk to say, okay, God, I am going to trust that you are going to save me in this. I'm going to trust that you hear me screaming Hosanna in this moment. I'm going to trust that you know I can't stand the situation that I'm in, and that you're going to somehow come through. You're going to right the things that are wrong, and you're going to hold things together. Just, oh God, know that disappointment's coming with me. Disappointment's coming with me. And we'll deal with it when we get there. We'll work through it on the other side of it. But I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you to come through. It's an inward risk. It's not necessarily anything on the outside. You're probably not going to change anything that you've done. But our trusting in God to come through for us is everything that this story is about. It really is about us trusting God. And that's about Iran. That's about all of the things happening in your life today. So I hope that you will consider deepening your trust in Jesus, even as your disappointments remain there as well. And so with that, friends, thanks for joining us for Studio Wesley Live. It's always a good time. We won't be here next week because we're going to take a week off for Easter, and then we'll be back the following week. And with that, friends, know that you're deeply loved by God. Nothing could ever separate you from God's love. Deepen your trust in God this week. And friends, we love you. Have a good one. See ya.